Hi, I'm Gary White for Central Kentucky Television. I'm here with Terry Mills, who is the state representative for the 24th District, which includes Marion County and our viewing area, as well as Greene County and LaRue counties. And we're going to give a little update on the legislative session, which is over now, right?
It is over, yes, sir.
There's a lot that went on. It was the first one with a new governor.
That's right.
And so we'll talk a little about some of the changes that brought about.
Yeah.
But why don't you give us a little your summary or highlights from this past session,
Yeah.
particularly with the budget that was passed.
Gary, I think the last time we talked, we were kind of in the middle or maybe towards the end of our regular session.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot has happened since then. In the end, there were a couple of 2 or 3 major issues that we dealt with this session. One was the biennial budget. Kentucky takes in $21 billion every 2 years. We have to prepare a budget every 2 years to say how that money is spent. That was a major part of what we did during this session. There was some legislation. I think most people are aware that our state pension systems were facing pretty much what most people agreed was a crisis. They were underfunded severely, and we developed a plan to deal with that. And then there were some other major legislation. There was a bill passed that allows for public projects to be done by in a partnership with private companies. It's known as P3 legislation, which stands for Public-Private Partnership, three Ps.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's referred to as 3Ps. We've been working on that for several years. Most people believe that will allow us to do some public projects, such as roads and other projects that we might not have been able to do otherwise. So that was kind of a big piece of legislation. Another major bill that was passed this year that's been in the legislature for several years was House Bill 40, which allows the expungement of certain felonies that are considered less grievance than a lot of them. The bill started out, there were 361 offenses which could be expunged if this law were changed. After debate and compromise, it ended up, I believe, with about 61 offenses that there's no such thing as a small felony, but they're lesser felonies than some of the others, like small drug deals, marijuana use, things like that. So that was a major accomplishment in this session. On the last night of the session, we have to end it by midnight on April 15th. That's the law. About 11:30, we finally voted on a budget bill that was agreed upon by House and the Senate. And in the budget bill, the biggest debate was over education. As just real briefly, as most of you know, the governor proposes a budget, sends it to the House makes changes, sends it to the Senate makes changes, and then the House and the Senate compromise, reach an agreement, and it goes back to the governor. And so at the end of the House-Senate process, first, when the governor sent it to us, there were a lot of cuts proposed. There were 9% cuts for each year to post-secondary education, colleges and universities, which a lot of people complained that would cause tuition, which is skyrocketing out of control now anyway, to go even higher. And there were cuts to K through 12 education also. The governor's budget didn't cut the basic formula for funding education, but what it did was cut a lot of the things I call peripheral services, like family resource centers, like after-school programs, Read to Achieve programs, and training for teachers, and those kind of things. So in the end, the House and the Senate agreed not to cut anything from the K through 12, and we agreed to a 4.5% cut, which is half what the governor wanted in post-secondary education for each of the next 2 years. One thing that was different about the budget that the governor sent us was not only did he propose those cuts for the next 2 fiscal years beginning July 1st of 16, but he also cut immediately. In other words, for the last 6 months of this fiscal year, he cut these things. And there's been some argument and differences of opinion about whether that's legal, and actually there was a lawsuit filed by the Attorney General and that's pending in court now. So we felt like we had a pretty decent budget which kept funding whole for education,
K through 12.
K through 12, and did the best we could do for post-secondary education. So we passed it, as I said, on April 15th, and then it goes to the governor. And the governor had it for, he's allowed 10 days to review it and decide if he would like to veto parts of it. And probably, I know that the governor did choose to veto a lot of it. I know that for the last 10 years, these vetoes are by far more than any time in the past 10 years, because I went back and personally researched that. I don't know about before that. But we do have a different administration. Governor Bevin is our governor, and he's the leader, and I respect that. So we all need to work together to honor his wishes as best we can within the framework of our philosophies, what we believe in, you know. So there's always differences on that.
Was there some rationale on the number of vetoes or some of the things that were vetoed?
Well, that was another thing that has some question to it. When the governor vetoes a part of the budget, he has to give an explanation, a veto message as to why it was vetoed. And in a few of the vetoes, he didn't give an explanation. Well, some of the House members are complaining that you know, you have to give a message, and of course he says the governor says it's legal. So that debate kind of continues. I have a list, Gary, of the vetoes. There's far too many to cover in the time we have here today. Maybe I could hit some of the highest ones. One that was particularly important to me. I consider myself an advocate for better wages for working people, and we looked at our state government, our transportation cabinet, highway employees, and I kind of fought this year to get a study done to determine how they are paid compared to surrounding states, how they're paid compared to private people who do that kind of work. And there's been a lot of confusion in the pay for transportation cabinet employees. So I proposed a study. I had a bill to do it, but the bill didn't pass, but we put it in the budget where a study would be done and a report would be given, and then we could kind of look and see if transportation cabinet employees are being paid fairly and make changes to cause them to be paid fairly if they weren't. The governor pretty much killed that notion. He didn't take it out of the budget language, but he said in his message they had to give a report by the end of October, and he said there's no deadline for giving a report, and he said the personnel cabinet said it would take at least 2 years to do the study. So basically that kind of went away. So I was a little disappointed by that. But that was for me personally. But the biggest veto item was this scholarship program that the House put in the budget. We called it Work Ready Kentucky, and what it does is allow for no tuition cost for the first 2 years of post-secondary school. For example, person pursuing an associate degree at a community or technical college, or an associate degree offered by one of our 4-year universities. We had a plan to where those kids and those parents wouldn't have to pay any tuition for the first 2 years. Now there's a lot of requirements that they had to meet to do it. They had to take 15 hours. They had to start it within a certain time after they got out of high school. They had to maintain a 2.5 grade point average. And we were excited about it because one of the biggest, in fact, a survey that I did back in the first part of the session told me, my constituents told me that college tuition was one of the greatest concerns. And so this would have allowed for coverage of anything that the other programs didn't help. You had to file a FAFSA. Those of you that have applied for college aid, you know FAFSA, federal application for student aid, is the first thing you have to do, and then you have to take all the grants that you can get there and any other grants, and then whatever was left, this program paid it so that it would be tuition free.
So if you were getting an associate's degree, it would be free, the whole thing, because that's usually a 2-year degree.
Your tuition would be free because it's usually a 2-year degree.
And you'd be able to get that grade.
And the reason...
If you're going for a bachelorette, half of it would be free.
That's right.
Okay.
The reason that came about is because we're hearing so loudly from our industries that they need technically trained, skilled labor to do the work they do. There are lots of jobs out there, and they tell us they're having trouble filling them excuse me, because there's not enough candidates who have the necessary skills. This would have allowed people to go from high school into technical college, learn a skill such as welding, robotics, computer operation, the things that are done in factories now, and go to work and not have debt, not have to pay back a student loan. It would allow them to get through school without debt, and it would have provided our employers with quick labor. The governor vetoed that.